Good morning, everyone. This is Stephanie Halko in the Treasurer's office. I'm here with Treasurer Folwell and a couple other folks from our press office. Thanks for joining us this morning. I know we've got a couple of things to talk about. Most recently, the provider reimbursement strategy that we're pursuing with the state health plan. We could also talk about 2018 pension earnings if you're interested in that. So first, we'll start off by opening it up with Treasurer Folwell for a couple of comments.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you, staff, for putting this together. Thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. Obviously, there's a lot going on at the Treasurer's office, as Stephanie just mentioned. We have, since our last time together, we have reported our pension returns. There's a lot of things going on regarding the state health plan and the clear pricing model, which is reference-based pricing, which will set to increase transparency, lower cost, and push the power out to the consumer. And then lots of other really exciting things happening. So without any further ado, I think we'll just open it up for questions.
Okay, who's got a question for us this morning?
Well, this is Dan Way, Carolina Journal.
Hi, Dan.
I see this morning that there's some news out of the Court of Appeals that they reversed the decision on the state health plan reimbursement contract. Have you seen that yet?
Dan, thank you. I have been briefed on that over the last couple of minutes of this unanimous decision to support what the state health plan did several years ago. We are obviously very happy that this wasn't just a verdict. It was a unanimous verdict in favor of the state health plan. We're encouraged about the fact that the Court of Appeals actually looked at the law and applied the law to their decision. And lastly, more importantly, is that this issue has been around for a long time, and in addition to all the other unfunded liabilities, this lawsuit, until it runs its full course, has had the potential of being one of the largest settlements in the history of North Carolina, to the tune of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
So, needless to say, it's a pretty big deal. Do you expect an appeal?
Well, you know, we can't control what people do. We can only control how we react to it. And you know, we're fully prepared for an appeal. And I want to take an opportunity to thank the Solicitor General, Matt Solchak, and his staff. They have worked with our staff very closely. And the thing that is most rewarding to me, because I have sat through these hearings as they've proceeded since I've been the state treasurer, and the fact that we're always advocating for the invisible. And the fact is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to reform the state health plan of North Carolina so that it is sustainable for the next generation of public service workers. And the threat of this lawsuit has been hanging over the head of the state health plan for several years. And we're very pleased with this verdict. And we're very happy for all of our staff that put so much into this case, as well as Solicitor General Solchak and his staff.
So would you begin applying those premiums again, or how is that going to work?
That's the irony of this, Dan. We have maintained and offered a premium-free option for the entire period of time for which this lawsuit was filed. That has not changed. So in biblical terms, that was true yesterday, and that is true today. And so nothing has changed along those lines. It had to do with the 80-20 plan and possibly some nuances between what the coverages were within inside those two plans. And that's something that happened several years ago. And it's just another reason, and Dan, you've been so good about this when you're in our state health plan board meetings, it's just another reason that we are very cautious anytime that we do anything with deductibles, co-pays, and the like. and we're always trying to do them by communicating with these stakeholders, all these groups, many of whom were plaintiffs on this lawsuit, because at the end of the day, anytime that we do anything in the state health plan, it's not an attempt to hurt anyone. It's an attempt to make sure that this plan is around for the next generation of public service workers.
All right.
Dan, do you have a follow-up, or would someone else like to ask a question?
Stephanie, this is Jeff with the County Compass. I'd like to ask Dale if there are any other states that are pushing for the reforms that Dale's doing here in North Carolina. Is there a gold standard out there, or are we basically blazing the path?
Jeff, thank you for joining us today. Only several months after we started steering toward reference-based pricing, and of course we only did that after meeting with all the hospital groups and the doctor groups that you're hearing about. And first thing we did on this whole issue, Jeff, was we pushed the power out to these stakeholders and said, give us the ideas that we can operationalize that helps us cut costs between 12 and 15%. The 12 to 15% was their number, not our number. So we were actually, trying to take their advice. And of course, no real suggestions came. Only months after we started looking at reference-based pricing did we realize that Montana had initiated and operationalized and implemented reference-based pricing. But I'd like to remind all the listeners that most everything that happens in a hospital revenue statement today is reference-based pricing. Medicaid, reference-based pricing. Medicare, reference-based pricing. And all these distractions try to get us distracted into something called value-based health. That's been around for decades. But the fact is, whether it's the tie you're wearing, or Jeff, or the car that you drove into work today, you can't value anything unless you know what it costs. And you can't cut the cost of anything until you know what it costs. So I would say, to directly answer your question, we're the largest state to implement reference-based pricing. And it's an attempt to do several things. Number one, increase transparency. Number two, lower cost. And number three, which is more important than anything, because of those two things, to be able to push the power out to the consumer. The consumer who in every aspect of their life knows how to buy the cheapest gasoline, the best cup of coffee. They know how to analyze from east to west to north to south of this state. They know how to analyze the value of consuming. And we want to give them the tools necessary to do that. We think by increasing transparency, that will lower cost, and we will be able to push the power out to the consumer, who has a really good record of knowing how to consume in every other part of their life.
Thank you.
Did I directly answer it? Do you want to follow up, Jeff?
Actually, I'm delighted that Montana is doing this. At least there's at least one other state that where we can say we're not an aberration on this front at all. And I'm kind of really flabbergasted by House Bill 184. Is this, say you say ask me anything, is this the hospital lobby at its worst?
Well, as I said in our press release about House Bill 184, number one, we're opposed. Number two, we don't have money and lobbyists and all these other things that are being thrown at House Bill 184. All we have to offer the people of North Carolina as keepers of their public purse is good government.
So should we mention the four primary sponsors and all secondary sponsors when we write about this, in the hope that readers and so forth will contact their elected representatives? and voice their opinion on this proposed legislation?
Well, we're big proponents at the Treasurer's Office of increased transparency and pushing the power away from us, and I think what you just described would be an example of both those things.
Dale, this is Dave Mildenberg. Senator Steinberg says the compromise is needed. Did you guys have any part in drafting the bill, and do you think there is some room for compromise?
Thank you, David. No, we had absolutely no input in drafting the bill. As a matter of fact, there's parts of it which binds us to Blue Cross Blue Shield that are, for lack of a better word, bizarre, even beyond, in some respects, the contract period. So we have absolutely no input in drafting the bill. And, to go back to an earlier point, Dave, I've heard of what Senator Steinberg said, but as I've said to many of you on this call before, solving these problems is not going to make any difference in my life. It's not going to make any difference in the lives of the people who work at the Treasurer's Office. It's going to make a huge difference to nearly 750,000 people on the state health plan, many of them who can't afford the family premiums. So all these attacks on me or on the Treasurer's Office or on the state health plan, those are really attacks on the governor. Those are attacks on every member of the Council of State. Those are attacks on the legislature because they're the ones that pay the bills. These attacks aren't on me. They're on the people that are actually paying the bills. And anybody who is interested in compromise, they need to write a check for it. And that's at the end of the day. I mean, we're not doing this because we're trying to hurt people. We're doing this because we are on an unsustainable course, and it's putting North Carolina's financial future in jeopardy. And
you said something about Blue Cross and bizarre. I missed that. What was that?
There's a provision of the bill, the last paragraph, and I don't have it in front of me, that talks about prevents us from doing reference-based pricing, and then sort of mandates that we use Blue Cross Blue Shield for a long period of time. And I want to remind everybody on this call that any time that you try to reform health care, when you say that until 2021, it takes 2 to 3 years of runway to fix anything in health care. So really, when you're talking about reforming this system or slowing it down, or the House Bill 184 of actually stopping it, all you're really doing is saying it's really never going to happen.
So I guess I'm ashamed of myself. I'm like Representative Pelosi. I haven't read the bill. You're saying in the last paragraph mandates that Blue Cross Blue Shield would be your TPA for a considerable period?
For the period of 2000, I'll read it to you if I may. For the period of January 1 of this year till the end of 2021, the state treasurer, the state health plan, the board of trustees of the state health plan, and the executive administrator of the state health plan shall continue to utilize the Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina Blue Options Provider Network, and to reimburse said network participating providers in accordance with 100% of the applicable fee schedule. Further, the state health plan, the board of trustees, the executive director, and the treasurer shall not implement or utilize any reference-based pricing model to reimburse providers during the specified period of this section. This section, will become...
Does that conflict with your existing agreement?
I don't have the lawyer in here from the state health plan to answer that question, but it just basically says that we're not allowed to do anything. You know, obviously what we're doing here is we're creating the state health plan network inside of Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's what the president of Blue Cross Blue Shield has agreed to do, to stand up a network inside Blue Cross Blue Shield called the North Carolina State Health Plan Network. And that's the path that we were going down to have reference-based pricing, and Section 2 of House Bill 184 would prevent that from happening.
I don't want to hog this, but final question is, have you met with Secretary Cohen about these issues?
No. I've met with Secretary Cohen. I've met her one time, maybe 7-8 weeks ago for 30 minutes because, things that she's working on our paths cross, obviously, with the state health plan and what she's doing on Medicaid. Now, I explained to Secretary Cohen, as an employer of tens of thousands of people at DHHS, what we're trying to do and how it will, impact her as an employer of people, which I did at the Council of State meeting this morning. So I do that to anyone that'll listen. And fortunately, we have several people on the call this morning that are always honor us by listening.
Dale, this is Dan Way again. I'm just wondering, the General Assembly tried to get out of the day-to-day operations of the state health plan a couple years ago, and that's how, as I understand it, you ended up with the Board of Trustees making all these big decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this as a reversal of that decision previously? I mean, is the General Assembly situated better now to be meddling in the operations? Are they any better situated today than they were then?
Well, I was actually in General Assembly when all that was going on. I remember being in the House, a member of the House of Representatives, where the state health plan, I believe, got down to 3 days worth of reserves, which, if the state health plan had been an insurance company, a real insurance company, the insurance commissioner would have had no choice but to shut it down immediately. That's how insolvent it was, and that's how on the brink it was. And there was also people who were indicted and sent to jail from the General Assembly because of their involvement in issues regarding the state health plan. So the decision was made to move the state health plan into the Treasurer's office, and we have the constitutional and statutory authority to do what we're doing. But more importantly, as anxious as everybody is about reference-based pricing, we know every day, based on the information that's coming into us, even from many healthcare providers actually, who are equally as frustrated with this as the consumers are, we know that we're telling the truth and we're doing the right thing. So that's all I will say about the fact that it used to be at the General Assembly and now House Bill 184 is an attempt to pull it back.
And so I see Cody Hand over at the North Carolina Healthcare Association, which represents the big hospital lobby, was putting out a tweet last night saying that apparently that you're beholden to the unions who want to mandate non-negotiated rates, driving system toward state-run healthcare and socialized medicine with rationing. How should we respond to a claim like that?
Well, I don't respond to lobbyists. I respond to people who are actually interested in finding and fixing these problems. And the fact is that the state health plan doesn't have one contract with any lobbyist, even those who make millions of dollars to try to stop what we're doing per year. Our contracts are with providers, and we are having fantastic conversations with providers. Our goal is, especially with primary care physicians, mental health specialists, and many of the rural hospitals across North Carolina, our goal is to make sure that they are independent and that they are profitable so that people have access to health care. So that's my response. And so.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions this morning?
This is Mark Kozak, North Carolina Health News. Just a quick question. There was a story this morning where I think it was the CEO of Vidant sort of basically said essentially that they would be open to sort of some kind of compromise, some measure that's in between your current plan, Treasurer Folwell, and something that's not doing anything at all, at least for the time being, like the study commission bill would. I'm just wondering if you would be open to some kind of a compromise that would represent, a difference from what you currently propose, but not no change at all.
Yeah, number one, when you say Vidant, we have to be clear whether we're talking about the entity called Vidant or Mr. Waldron, who's also the president of the Hospital Association, who is sending out all these attacks, like was just mentioned by Dan Way. So number one, as far as compromise, the people at Vidant need to tell the folks of Eastern North Carolina how much they've gone up on their health care in the last 5 years. We've attempted to do that, and we received a letter back and said they do not consent for us to release that information. So it sort of starts there. Going back to Mark to a little bit of optimism here, which I'm not normally known for. Number one is that every time at any place that I've been invited to a meeting by anyone on this subject, I have physically attended. Last October, last November, last December, even a few days before Christmas, with legislators. Every time that I've been called down to a meeting with Representative Murphy, with Representative Dobson, with Representative Lambeth at that time, any time that I've been called to a meeting, I have shown up for that meeting. And we've had great negotiations with many of these providers. But secondly, it comes down, number one, to transparency. And number two is that there are hospitals that are going to be getting pay increases as a result of this plan, and some that are going to be getting pay decreases. Generally speaking, the ones that are, especially the pay increases, are ones that are being paid below the rate that we have set. There's no way that they can maintain that. So in many instances, they will be getting pay increases. But the compromise, there is no compromise on transparency. And my optimism, which I'll sort of strayed from a little bit, is this. I contend and feel stronger every minute of every day that we have enough medical providers in this state, we have enough medical needs among state employees, and we have enough billions of dollars we ought to be able to figure this out. And I can tell you that North Carolina has led the nation in many other aspects of its physical health, not just over the last 8 years, but over the last 50 years. And our opportunity as being known as a state that has transparent health care costs may or could be one of the biggest economic drivers of North Carolina over the next 20 years. Because it's because it's one of the biggest expenses of businesses who are thinking about coming here.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes.
Yeah. So is that a yes or no? You would be open to compromise some other version of the proposal that you got out, something different?
My reputation, and anybody on this phone call who knows me a little longer than you have, Mark, knows that I'm always looking for new information or a better way of looking at old information on any topic, any time, any place, anywhere.
That sounds like a yes to me.
Well, you're not going to put words in my mouth, so I'll stand by what I said.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions?
Stephanie, this is Jeff with the County Compass again. How about the pension plan? A loss as opposed to a 7% gain, that's pretty dramatic. Could Dale address that briefly, please?
Thank you, Jeff. It's not just dramatic for 1 year. That is the report card for the last 21 years, Jeff, on average. We have not hit that target on average for 21 years. So last year, when we didn't hit it, we had negative return. It created another $2 billion of unfunded liability in the pension plan. This year so far, we've had a good year. But the fact is that, and this is printable, it's just hard to explain. The better funded you are in your pension plan, the harder it is to do the right thing and lower the assumed rate of return. And the punchline of that statement is simply this: because you're funding it. These states that are coming out with these verbose press releases about how they're lowering the assumed rate of return of their pension plans weren't funding them. You can say you're going to do anything, but if you're not funding it, the press release doesn't matter. We're actually lowering the assumed rate of return to something that's more realistic, but we're doing it in conjunction with the legislature, the County Commissioner Association, and the League of Municipalities, who we send the bills to fund the plan. So it's a little bit off of what your question was, but the pension plan continues to be one of the best funded in the United States. But it has headwinds. The headwinds are, number one, that the plan has not achieved its assumed rate of return on average for 21 years. Number two, there's no minimum retirement age in the plan. So people could literally retire at 48, 49 years of age, and for most females, based on their life expectancies, would be retired longer than they worked for the state. And the third thing is the blessedness of life expectancies. When I was in high school in Forsyth County in the late 70s, the plan was paying out benefits to 248 people over the age of 90. 3 days ago, we paid out benefits to 7,300 pensioners over the age of 90. The number that I quoted for the late 70s, we're about to hit that number for people over 100 now. I was asked in the Appropriations Committee the other day, Jeff, about how much money we've saved in the pension plan. And we're on course right now to, over a 4-year period, to save nearly $500 million in Wall Street fees and other kinds of things that were happening in the pension plan. We're on course to save over $500 million over a 4-year period. Guess how much money we sent out for the last 30 days? 518 million. All the money that we're working our tails off to save in the pension plan and Wall Street fees and other kinds of expenses, all the money that we're going to save after that Herculean effort over a 4-year period of time, that's what we paid out this weekend for 30 days.
Don't get discouraged. You're making the difference.
Can I ask follow-up, Dale? Are you guys have 6-7% allocation for private equity? Is that going to go up in the next 5 years?
Well, I'll be glad. We just had our investment advisory committee, David, and I'll be glad to send you the one-pager that shows how those alternative investments have actually performed relative to the S&P 500. And we now, for the first time, well, actually about 6 months ago, we for the first time in North Carolina history, we have a 20-year number of the performance of real estate, alternative investments, and we'll send all that to you. But the fact is that what saved us last year from not doing as poorly as other pension plans did across the country is that we have had a very conservative investment stance, and that has always been the case from Treasurer Gill, Treasurer Bowles, Treasurer Moore, and Treasurer Cowell. When you look at our benchmarking relative to pension plans within our peer group, there's 4 squares to this, David, and we're always up here in the left top quadrant in terms of our conservatism, which means when the stock market roars up, we don't do quite as well as other states do, but when the stock market comes down, we're able to withstand that shock better than others.
Well, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have a question for the treasurer this morning? No? We'll go ahead and have the treasurer make a few closing remarks then.
Thank you all for joining us. We've got some new entrants on the call today, and I appreciate all your questions. And we have been committed to the Ask Me Anything format from the first month after I was sworn in as treasurer, and we've done it every single month. And everybody on this call and some of those that may listen after the fact, all of you had a choice on where to be this morning and to where to allocate your capital and your resources. And we appreciate your interest in these subjects. These, as I just explained, just in the Wall Street fees, all the Herculean effort to save those fees, that's about what we paid out for 30 days just for pension, not including the health care and the pharmaceutical benefits. So these are big issues that, and everything that we do at the Treasurer's Office is an attempt to figure out what's right, get it right, and keep it right as keepers of your public purse. These issues will make the generational difference in education funding, crime, public safety funding, road construction funding, the ports, the parks, the zoos, and all the other core functions of our state government. If we succeed at the Treasurer's Office on these reforms, either on health care or pension, the executive branch succeeds and the legislature succeeds because of the sheer size of the amount of money that we're managing. If we fail, they fail. If we succeed, they succeed. And that's not an emotional statement or a political statement. It's simply a mathematical statement. And we appreciate you making the choice today to join us.